Guess we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So, hello and welcome to Disaster Strikes, locating government resources to help during crisis. Libraries are increasingly addressing challenges associated with digital inequality, access, inclusion, as well as issues of security and privacy. This includes when disaster strikes. Libraries are a perfect place to serve as a central hub for dealing with such emergencies by providing free access to government information and agencies. The United States government has a plethora of resources to aid people in natural and health-related emergencies. We have created a LibGuide that you can see on our screen, and we'll provide the link to that. This is an opportunity to explore the tabs for the information in the various situations. But before we really get into the guide, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. Jennifer?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Castle, and I'm a reference and the government documents librarian at Tennessee State University, which is located in Nashville, Tennessee.
And I'm Dominique Hallett. I am the STEM and Government Information Librarian at Arkansas State University in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
All right, great. So when you land on our homepage, this is what it looks like. It's pretty basic, but I'm going to jump right in the essence of time. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into this tab here, pandemic and other health-related resources. So we've organized this tab into 3 sections, which is tools and databases, food-related resources, and websites. Many of the databases we've compiled here are for first responders and medical professionals. While we're sure most police, sheriff, and fire departments have contingency plans for certain disasters, there are some issues such as food insecurity and like potential hazardous spills that may have resulted from a natural disaster that are more difficult to prepare for. And further, as we've seen recently, folks also might be taking medication that may not necessarily be suitable for human consumption out of fear and misinformation. So something I'd like to just take a few moments to show you is this zombie preparedness site. And I don't know if any of y'all have visited this before, and I know that it sort of seems silly on the surface, but we feel it's kind of a genius way to get folks' attention. So from time to time, the CDC's Public Health Matters blog will write about zombies. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to this. Hopefully I'm not too confusing here. This funny, this blog post is, teachable moments from the show The Walking Dead that advises you, very simply, hey, if you're going to stop, make sure you fill up before it's too late. Or, always have a first aid kit on hand. So maybe you just keep one in your car, and making sure that you have fresh water. Clean water is zombie-free water. So it was just these funny little things that we wanted to show you. But if it gets folks talking about, disaster preparedness, I think it's great to use a sense of humor about it. So I'm going to go ahead and click out of here, and we're back on our guide. And then something else that we have is, so it kind of goes into, say, if you, for example, are affected by a disaster, and say maybe your local like your local pharmacy might have also been affected by by a disaster. So like this drugs, herbs, and supplements kind of breaks things down alphabetically, but it's a really great, useful things you can locate to sort of see, you know, whether there's any drug interactions, which, you know, you might be important whenever you're, you know, caring for a family after a disaster or elderly family members. So let me go ahead and click out of here. So let me go ahead and also here for food related resources, it was really important, you know, Office of Food Safety, foodsafety.gov, because things can get spoiled if, you know, once we lose power. So that kind of covers this first tab here. And let me go ahead and let Dominique take over for natural disaster resources.
Our next tab is about natural disasters. And as you can see, this one only has 2 columns, but this is the front page of our site. Natural disasters happen. We have no control when it comes. We can't stop them. It's just one of those things, but we do have to be prepared and be ready to deal with the aftermath. The US government has information and programs that can assist in a lot of these situations. On this first page, we have some general links, some that we mentioned before and some that we'll mention in other sections as well. We have the disasterassistance.gov, which is a portal for after a disaster happens. This can help you to find ways to apply for assistance. And one thing I really like about this particular site is it is both in English and Spanish. Of course, we have a link to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which provides not only recovery information, but also some emergency preparedness information. Medline Plus is a searchable database of journal articles that includes information on disasters and some medical testing information. And this medical testing is not limited to things like the pandemic. Natural disasters can leave a lot of diseases and other medical things that may not otherwise occur. If you've got flooding, that can change things in your groundwater. So you have to be able to find information on what do I do to have safe groundwater? And you can look at some of these articles to find out. The Natural Disaster Recovery Program database mainly deals with assistance programs, as well as opportunities for disaster response managers and institutions. It doesn't really focus on how individuals can get involved, but if you are part of a disaster response group or something like that, it's maybe a place you want to look. This is maintained by FEMA. You can also find out by clicking on that link if your area has been declared an official disaster and where to find emergency shelters in your area. Not all disasters are natural disasters. Some of them are actually man-made. That's why we included NTAS, the National Terrorism Advisory System. Their goal is to communicate information about terrorist threats in a timely manner to the public. That's more of an alert system than anything. Of course, most of us know about the National Weather Service because we use that to keep up in our area. Are there tornadoes in the area? When is the hurricane going to make ground fall? Things like that. So that's one we tend to be rather familiar with. Now, ready.gov contains information for consumers about disaster preparedness, including building emergency kits and how to plan for emergencies. And that's really good. It's got stuff that can be used in schools to help school children understand about having a kit ready, and it can help families prepare and develop their own disaster plans. Now, like I said, this is just our front page. As Jennifer was just highlighting, we have a drop-down menu there that deals with different types of specific natural disasters that are fairly common. Now, we don't cover every natural disaster that's possible, but we do have a tab for earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, and wildfires. We specifically went with those because those are the ones that are most common to the majority of the United States. We didn't really include anything about like volcanoes. That's actually very regionally specific. You know, I live in Arkansas, really don't need to have a disaster preparedness plan for a volcano, you know. But one thing that happened today is National Shakeout for 2021. What this is something our campus participates in every year, and it deals with earthquake preparedness. And I spent, you know, a few minutes of my day under my desk, as I was supposed to, preparing, you know, the stop, drop, and cover. But to bring awareness to what is done in the case of an earthquake. And Jennifer and I were just talking about this right before this presentation. While yes, I can get under my desk, I'm also about 30 feet from a stairwell. I'm on a second floor. I can head down that stairwell. There's an emergency exit at the end, and I'm about probably 50 feet from a big parking lot. So rather than get under my desk, I am probably going to, you know, look for my closest emergency exit if I'm in my office and head to the middle of a parking lot where there are no power lines and no trees. So these are the kind of things you need to think about as these things go on. Yeah, we included a link to the National Shakeout on the right-hand side of the earthquake one. And that big red dot right in the middle of there, that's where I live. So that's one of the reasons our university looks at this and takes part in it. We also included some information for floods, including the National Flood Insurance Plan, as well as the CDC and FEMA. Flooding can cause a lot of health issues. I mean, technically, I guess earthquakes can as well, but when you're dealing with flooding, you're talking water, and that is vital to existence. So that is a really good place to look for resources. Now, we don't really have time today to show you everything we've gathered, but we do want you to take a look at our guide. I've actually had just posted a link a bit ago in the chat, and we'll make sure you have the link again at the end of the program. But look at the different drop downs we have that are more specific to your area, may give you some ideas, because where else are people going to go in times of crisis to find information? They're going to go to the library. Now we're going to go back to Jennifer, and she's going to talk to you about disaster medicine.
Just real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and just show you what it sort of looks like with these drop-down menus. Hopefully I'm not moving too quickly, but let me go ahead and move on to disaster medicine. You know, as we mentioned before, you know, we're not going to visit every site that we have listed on our guide, but I will briefly show you a couple here. So on this tab, we have, you know, essential databases like DisasterLit and the, you know, National Library of Medicine's toxicology, as well as, like I mentioned before, the drugs, herbs, and supplements, and drugs and lactation database, because, you know, pregnancies don't just go away during disasters. So let me go ahead, and this is really fascinating that there's this whole database here that contains information on drugs and other chemicals that, you know, breastfeeding mothers might be exposed to. It's really very fascinating. I mean, I sort of wished I had known about this when I was pregnant, but, and they've, you know, again, they've broken it down into alphabetical order, which is a lot easier for those of us who are just regular consumers. Like I'd mentioned before, you know, your local pharmacies may have been affected by natural disasters. So to be able to look up drug interactions could be crucial. Let me go ahead and click out of here. There are also several good websites on mental health. So there is one for like PTSD or, you know, trauma with children, so National Advisory Committee on Children's and Disasters. You know, I grew up in Florida. Luckily, I never experienced a hurricane that did any significant damage to my family's home, but it, you know, that does often happen on those those states that are along the Gulf Coast, they're along the Atlantic coast. There is a site on, clinical diagnosis and treatments of radiation, and after a disaster, if there's a nuclear emergency, or another on how professionals can volunteer during times of crisis, which I will also get to whenever we get to the recover. Something else that we wanted to have a very specific tab for is the opioid crisis. So this sort of just goes over various statistics, it defines, there's sort of a definition of what it's like, what is the epidemic, what are some commonly used terms. There's information on overdosing, there's opioid summaries by state, there's even this great site here on naloxone for opioid overdose, and it can give information about how you can administer it, how does it work, is it safe. So these are really great sites that the government provides a lot of information out there. The problem is that it's all really scattered among various websites. So really the big idea about this guide is being able to kind of put everything together as like a one-stop shop. So let me go back here. And of course, there's links to the National Library of Medicine on the topic. And then let me go ahead and let Dominique take over for National Policy Resources.
Our National Policy Resources section is actually fairly small, but it deals with things like the FDA, food defense and emergency response. There's the Homeland Security Digital Library, medical countermeasures, and the National Incident Management System. So these are just some resources that you may see. We have so much information and access to so much information from the government about different aspects of disasters and how to deal with them. So we're getting a little short on time here. So I'm going to let Jennifer go ahead and move on to talk about our last two tabs.
Okay. So for the Prepare tab, before I begin, I just want to state that many states have disaster preparedness plans. We're just focusing on this guide for federal resources. So please check your state for further information. With that said, many government departments have created disaster preparedness plans, from the CDC to the USDA to the EPA. Ready.gov, as was mentioned before, is the federal government's primary source for disaster preparedness resources. And it is tailored to provide preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation information. Let me go ahead and click on that real quick so you can see. But essentially, this whole site, kind of walks you through the basic steps folks should take when planning for a disaster. There are also government publications with vital information on like how to prepare for various types of disasters. So look, it has a whole list here. So this is, please don't sleep on this. And I know that it sounds like, we're proselytizing, but it is really important that that that's out there. So since we are kind of running low on time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the recover tab. So any disaster can leave you traumatized, as I mentioned before. So there are coping tips available. There's loan assistance. There's FEMA's individuals and household programs and more. But specifically disaster assistance right here, disasterassistance.gov will have the most complete look at recovery. So I'm just going to go ahead and click there real quick. And even here, it also will walk you through how you can find assistance, how to apply for assistance, check your status on that. And then once you get a essentially, what is this? I guess a FEMA login or FEMA number. It will also provide for you this transitional sheltering assistance. So that's really important if you've lost your home or it has at least suffered some sort of damage. Let me go ahead and click out of here. And I just wanted to remind everybody that this guide is not exhaustive, but it is maintained. And, if anybody were interested in, like, if there were things that we missed, then please feel free to reach out to us over here on that homepage. We have our contact information. So go ahead. I'll let Dominique wrap it up.
As you can see, libraries can provide access to all of these resources in one place. We provide both, in some cases, print resources as well as electronic from the federal government. And by having knowledge of these resources and where to find them, libraries provide the opportunity for digital equity, access, and inclusion. We are kind of a one-stop shop, but that's what libraries have always been. We're the one-stop shop for information. If we don't have it, we'll find it for you. So these resources are here for everybody, and libraries should always serve as a central hub in the community for dealing with anything, including emergencies. So by providing this free access to government information and agencies, we're doing our part to make it better for everyone. So do you guys have any questions for us?
I had 2 questions that came through in the chat. Renee Von Nort had asked who built or created the LibGuide website.
I did.
And Andrew Smith, do any of the institutions here have experience with disasters? And did you find that your community turned to the library for information?
So I can say specifically in March of 2020, Tennessee State University was hit by tornadoes, and it did, I think, approximately $3 million worth of damage to the campus, mostly affecting the agricultural department. Yes, so we definitely fielded questions from specifically the agriculture department on locating resources for their livestock. Hopefully that answers your question.
And Arkansas State University, we had an ice storm in 2009 that knocked out the power in large portions of Arkansas, period. But in our area, we did have people come because we still had power in at least part of the library. I'm not going to get into that. That was a weird situation. But we were able to provide access for people so they could get in touch with their relatives, because at the time, cell phone towers were just overloaded. We had everything from telephone poles and cell phone towers breaking because of the ice storm. Because the ice storm hit, froze everything, and the next day the temperatures were up in the 40s and 50s and things were melting off fast. And so the trees couldn't handle it, nothing could handle it. We were just shut down, except for at the libraries, people were able to get in and be able to get in touch with their loved ones and say, hey, I'm okay. If I can get there, can I come to your house because we don't have electricity? We had a lot of that type of stuff going on. And I know a number of the librarians at the university library actually came up and stayed at the library because they didn't have power, but the library did. So fortunately, that's about the only major disaster we have had in recent times. And people were without power for months in some parts of Arkansas.
I see a question from Lorene. Who does the updates on resources? Do you mean on the guide, or do you mean within the federal government? If you're talking about the guide, we do all the updates on the resources. But as terms of, the way the federal government, I mean, I'm sure you probably have some idea of what it's sort of like, you know, the various departments, some of them work together and others don't, and they often sort of just come up with their own things and produce those out. And so that was sort of the idea of why we put this guide together, is because they're not always connected. I hope
And
that
Ruth,
answers your question.
And Ruth, feel free to swipe any of the information on there. Government information is freely available. So make use of that, copy it over to your page, link to our page, whatever you want to do. We want this information out there.
And hang on, I will put the link back in the chat.
I was going to say, I've got it.
There it is. And then, you know, just in case, I will put our email addresses in. So feel free, if you're interested in, you know, making a copy of the guide, so you can, you know, edit it and tailor it to your, it will be available later. Yeah, so feel free to email me, or I think you can even, I think you probably can find it when you're creating a guide. If you're in, you know, in the beginning, you can sort of, when you're creating a guide, choose whether you can choose something from the community, reuse a guide. So feel free to look that up. But if not, you know, just send me an email and I'll send you the info.
If you have LibGuides, all you have to do is, when you're creating a guide, you don't create a new guide, you create one from a template, and then you put in the URL for this guide, and it will make you a copy of it. And then you just edit it to meet your needs.
In fact, I wonder if I can show you real quick here. Well, no, because I'm not, well, hang on, let me log in. Show you real quick. So you create guide, and then, you know, copy content from an existing guide, and then
Switch it to community.
switch it to communities, and then you can do that. Okay, so I'll have to make it available to the community, but it should be just as it's easy to do as just to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's available to the community, so anyone who wants to copy it can use it.
Yeah, please share this information any way you want. It's all free government information, so we don't have any sort of you know, copyright on it.
And all of the photos we have used are available. We made sure there's no issues with copyright or anything.
Yeah, all the images are either, you know, Creative Commons, or they're from the government. And everything is linked. So feel free, a lot of it's from the Library of Congress or National Archives and Records Administration. Any other questions? We don't want to hold everybody up. I mean, since we're getting close to time, but feel free to email us if you have any questions, or you just want to chat about it, or if you want to share it, or you have a link that we should add. Thanks everyone for coming. We really appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
You're welcome, Maureen. Yeah, enjoy. Marisol, do we just end the meeting, or is this the same